Okay guys, next product we're going to look at as well as oxidising semi-permanent, previously called a quasi-colour. This product is in between a permanent and a semi-permanent colour. So where does it go and what does it do? So where it goes is, it goes in through the cuticle layer and it goes to your cortex. It partially opens your cortex and it just sits like at the top of it, just partially going in. It's got a staining effect in the cortex. So the actual cortex gets stained with this product, okay? That's a good thing for what I'm going to talk about moving on with the porosity. Give me 5 minutes and I'll go into that. So the colour range that we're talking about is the oxidising semi-permanent is called Colour Touch, okay? So we know it goes on top of the cortex, it partially opens it. What does this product do? What can it do? Can it darken? Can it lighten? Can it change tone? Remember the 3 fundamentals. What can it do? Well, it can darken, it can add tone, but it can't lighten. But there's one range within Colour Touch that can partially lighten. Again, I'll get to that when I'm going through the families. So you've got different ranges within Colour Touch. You've got your core range, which is your Colour Touch here. And this is your developer. Every range has their own developers, okay? So your Colour Touch is its own developer, which is 1.9 or 4%. Make sure everything's colour coded. I told you well, I make it easy. So red tube with the red Colour Touch developer. Colour Touch developer is red, it's always red. So always look for the red label. Whereas the Willoxon, which is the permanent range peroxides, they're predominantly blue. So red is for your oxidising and blue is for your permanent. Okay, so this is your core range, which means it's just your similar ranges to your colistin. So I would use this if I was darkening anybody's hair unless they had a higher percentage of grey than 50%. So how do you know if somebody's with the percentage of grey in somebody's hair is? It's basically how much dark you see next to how much grey. So see if for talking sake, you see somebody's hair that's dark, but you only see a couple of wee bits of grey going through it, it's maybe only up to 10%. A wee bit more, 25%. If it's half and half, 50%. If it's predominantly white, 75% to 100%, okay? Now, you would not use these on anybody's hair with a higher white rate than 50%. Because you won't get the coverage. But anybody else that's going dark, I would use Colour Touch all day long before I would use permanent colour. Why didn't you use permanent colour? When I can get the same result, probably better with this going darker or changing tone. Great for porosity, so anybody's hair that's in bad condition, the hair looks better after it than before because the molecules go in to the cuticle layer and fill that. And where this staining comes into play as well, which I was talking about earlier, when it stains the cortex, when people's hair's porous, it does one of two things. It either grabs hair colour and makes it patchy, or it spits it out and makes it patchy. So basically that's what hair colour does. So with these don't do that. These go in and they even the porosity out by infilling it into the cuticle layer. So when the hair's porous and it spits the colour out, there's nothing there because it's all the activities in the cortex and it spat it out, okay? But if it tries to spit out the Colour Touch, the staining on the cortex layer will still give you a colour, right? So the staining's there. So it's really good for that, but it's bad to try and get out. It's much easier to remove permanent colour from hair than it is from oxidising semi-permanent, which is bizarre, but that is the case because of this staining, okay? Now, the other ranges you've got a few ranges in Colour Touch. You've got your core range, which is your Colour Touch. You've also got your Colour Touch Plus range, which is this range here, which is a kind of purpley colour. This has got its own developer, the same colour as that. I don't have any home with me. It's the exact same colour as that and it's a 4% developer, okay? So where that comes into play is that covers up to 70% of grey. So somebody's got grey to be fair, well, it says 70% because that's what they can guarantee. To be honest, you'll get 80 up to 90% coverage with that, unless it's resistant grey hair. Resistant grey hair is just going to throw everything out anyway. So there's certain ways to deal with resistant hair. Again, that we'll go into another day. This is only about products. So the Colour Touch Plus range is for covering your white. So that's covering your 70% guaranteed white, okay? There's no, the advantage of this is the condition's fabulous, the coverage is amazing, the colour choices are good, but the disadvantage is they don't have a great wide range of colours in this. It's more basic, flatter colours. So that less tonal, shall we say, than the core range. So the next range I've got is called the Sunlights. Now Sunlights, I don't have any home with me. Sunlights, in fact I'll have them in this chat, I'll show you them. Sunlights don't have a base. Remember what I told you about the base, the depth before the slash and then the tones after it? They only have tone, so they only have numbers after the slash, which means they cannot cover, they can only tone. But Sunlights work a bit differently, so I'm just going to find them. Right, there's your Sunlights range, okay? So if you look at them, so I'll just say, for talking's sake, this one, stroke 8, okay? I'll just let you see it. So if we go up here, you'll see it's stroke 8, so there's nothing before the slash, it's only the tone after it. Now that's a stroke 8 pearl, okay? Pearl's blue, but you can't see the blue in that, but it's still, there's pearl in that, okay? So when would you use this? This is the only range within Colour Touch that will actually lift your hair colour. So this will give you a shade to a shade and a half lift. So for example, if you were a base 6, you would get a lift to a 7, possibly a 7 to 8, okay? You must use this with 4% developer of the Colour Touch developer. You cannot use this with the 1.9 developer, 4% only, because it has a lifting action. Now, this was originally made by Wella to take a shift off a root area, and what I mean by that is if your client was coming in for some highlights and she was coming in and she's got loads of highlights. So when her highlights are getting done now, she's predominantly blonde through the edges. So when her highlights are getting done now, she still sees that dark root. And the reason that dark root's so prominent, and you cannot get rid of that when you're doing highlights, is because there's been that many highlights through here. You've got a build up, so the hair looks predominantly blonde. So next to that, you're still going to see a root. Okay? So where Sunlights were made was to go in between those foils. When you had your foils in for your highlights, you would go in with your Sunlights through the natural hair to give that a shade to a shade and a half of shift or lift through that, so that the hash line between the highlights and the root colour was softer, so that the root area was not as noticeable. Now it's a great thing to use. It doesn't get used enough, to be fair. It's a great thing to use. Brilliant for that, even just lifting a shade, right? Just lifting the edges, the darkness off a shade. Really, really good for that. Can't use it as an ordinary toner. Do not use it as an ordinary toner, because this is a lightening product within an oxidising semi-permanent range, okay? So that is your range. It's called Sunlights, and it lifts a shade to a shade and a half. So again, when you get back to work, college, make sure you're looking at these shade charts and getting yourself familiar with these products. So the next one within the Colour Touch range is called Relights. Now Relights get used constantly. Again, they don't have any base or depth in them. So you've got your Relights blondes and you've got your Relights reds, if you can see them. Okay. Now these are just brilliant products. Your blondes are fabulous to tone blonde hair. The difference between these and using your core range or using your permanent range to tone, these don't have any depth or base, which means they do not darken or alter the colour of your hair or the colour of your highlights. What they do is go in and neutralise and tone any unwanted colour within your colour or your highlights. So they're great toners, your stroke 1-8, your stroke 8-6s, your nice pearls and violets, they'll go in and do their job. When I go through the colour wheel, you'll see where they'll fit in, okay? So for example, just give you an example, if a colour was too yellow, I would go in with the stroke 6, which is a violet, because violet, purple, counteracts yellow, okay? Just for an example of that. Now, if the hair was more orange, stronger orange, that I wanted to neutralise down, I would go in with my stroke 8, which is my pearl, which is my blue. So I would probably go more for my stroke 8 or stroke 1-8, which would be a kind of blue. Your stroke 1's grey and your stroke 8's pearl. So if you mix the two of them together, you get a really good blue. So that would be good to neutralise any orange. But again, that is too much information for this. Basically, I'm just wanting to tell you about products today. Okay, your Relights Reds, they were originally made to go to coincide with your Magma, which is a bleaching product, which I'll go through later on today as well. So they were made because a Magma's got a bleaching tone built in. It's a full interacting bleaching tone product all in the one tub. But the thing is, when you're using any bleaching or lightening products, you cannot go back over that existing lightening product with a lightening product because you'll break the hair. So what happens is when the tone was going out of the hair, which always happens when your hair's bleached, you lose tone. The Relights were made to replace and replenish that tone. So when your client come back in and said, you know what, my colour's faded out and I've started, it looks quite light now, you just put the Relights right on top of it and that replaces the tone that the client has washed out their hair. Now, tone does not last in the hair, especially on blondes or reds. You're talking about 2 weeks. 2 weeks tone you would get, and then they need to be retoned. So aftercare is very, very important when you're recommending any colours or you've got any colouring clients in. Recommend the correct aftercare so they don't, certain shampoos that they would steer clear of and not too high, and straighteners, make sure you're using heat protectors. Loads of things like that, loads of problems, but I'll do another wee thing on aftercare separate from today. The last range in Colour Touch is called Instamatics. Now, these are lovely. I've got them in my hair, I love them. Okay, so you've got, you see them here? Okay, so you've got the Smoky Amethyst, you've got Muted Mauve, you've got Pink Dream, you've got the Mint, and you've got the Storm Blue. The Mint's gorgeous, that's beautiful done. Now, these will only come up true colours if your hair is white. So if it's not white, it'll just neutralise unwanted tone in your hair. But if it's white, you will get those true tones. So say for talking's sake, I've got the Smoky Amethyst on mine along with the Muted Mauve and the Pink Dream. Now, my hair does not look pink if you can see it. It does not look violet. It looks quite ashy. What that's done is that's went into my hair and killed any warmth. My hair throws off loads of warmth, loads of yellow. So what that's done is that's went in and it's counteracted all my yellow to make my hair a softer colour rather than it sitting looking brassy. Now, how you mix these is, everything apart from Instamatics, you mix 1 to 2. So it's 1 part colour, 2 parts developer. Now you can use 1.9 or 4% Colour Touch developer with your core range. You would use your 1.9 when you want depth and you would use your 4% when you want brightness. So if you want it really bright, so if you want your stroke 6.5s, like your lovely pinks or your reds, you would use your 4%. You don't have to use them. If you want it deeper, you can use 1.9, but if you want it really bright, you can use 4%. When you're using your Colour Touch Plus, that's got its own developer and it's 4%. That must be used, but its own developer, 4%. Now remember, all the formulas work together. So when they bring out a developer to go with the product, it's the correct formula for you to get the true colour. Okay? Your Instamatics works differently. Now your Instamatics works 1 part colour to 1 part developer, and it's 1.9 and 1.9 only. Well, like I say, you can use 4%. To be honest, you lose the tone. You're getting too high a lift with it. So you're a lift to the colour out or the tone. I don't like it with 4%. I much prefer it with 1.9. Relights you'll use with 1.9 only. You will not use that with 4%. So any of your relights colour, it's 1.9 only, and it's 1 part colour to 2 parts developer. So for example, everything apart from Instamatics, you could mix 30 mils of the product with 60 mils of developer, and Instamatics would be 30 mils of colour with 30 mils of developer. Now remember, 1.9 for Instamatics and relights only, and 4% Colour Touch Plus with the Colour Touch Plus range, and 1.9 and 4% for the Colour Touch base range. Okay, so development times for that, development times is normally 20 minutes, but again, when I talk about development times, it's minimum development times. So if I say to you, what's the minimum development time? It'll be 20 minutes, but that doesn't mean to say that's the maximum development times. If you're under heat, you can take 5 minutes off that. You can go under for 15 under heat and 20 minutes without. If you're toning, it could go on for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. When it's toning, there's no rules on it. So basically, an average 20 minutes, but you can leave it longer than that. And if you're toning, you can leave it shorter than that. Okay, so that's your Colour Touch, that's your oxidising semi-permanent. And while I'm on the development time for collagen, I forgot to put that in that video. The collagen time is 40 to 45 minutes without heat, 30 minutes with heat. Again, minimum development times. You can leave it longer for more coverage, but don't take the collagen off any shorter than 40 minutes. Okay, so we'll just go on to my next one.